Adrian Malik Khan had more money than most people could even imagine, and yet, on most nights, he ate dinner alone, in silence, across a long glass table where his reflection often felt like the only company he had left. The world called him the lone CEO, a man who built an empire out of shattered pieces of his own life. A man who could buy the world, but could not find one heartbeat that stayed. He hadn't always been this way. Years ago, he had believed in love with the blind passion of a boy who thought promises meant forever. But the day his fiancée left him, choosing his wealth but not his wounds, laughing that a man who didn't know how to be touched could never love anyone, something broke inside him. Since then, the more powerful he became, the lonelier he grew. He didn't do attachments. He didn't do love. He didn't do hope. So when his best friend Ray forced him into a blind date, just one last time, Adrian. One final try. Adrian didn't care. He accepted only to stop Ray from nagging. He expected someone fake, polished, hungry for status. He expected another disappointment. By the time he arrived at the restaurant, he had already decided this would be the first and last date of the night. He would cancel early, give a polite lie, then leave before dessert. Love was a game he stopped playing long ago. But as he sat waiting, fingers tapping the table, eyes drifting toward the door, something strange stirred in his chest. A feeling he hadn't known in years, not hope, not excitement, something quieter, like a memory trying to breathe. Then the door opened. A young woman stepped inside, wearing a plainly stitched dress, her hair slightly wind-tangled as if she had walked far to get there. No expensive perfume. No jewels. No arrogance. Just uncertain, gentle dignity, like someone who had learned to survive without asking anything from the world. She looked around nervously, and the moment her eyes met his, something in him shifted. Not a spark. Not fireworks. Just a sudden ache, as if life whispered, "Here. Start breathing again." Adrian didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. But for the first time in years, he didn't want to leave the table. She walked slowly toward the table, as if unsure whether she was truly meant to be there. Her hands trembled a little while holding her purse close to her chest, and her breathing carried the weight of someone who had hurried, not out of eagerness, but fear of being late, fear of disappointing someone. When she reached him, she gave a soft, awkward smile. Are you Adrian?" she asked gently. Her voice was not bold, not flirtatious, not rehearsed like all the others he had met before. It was fragile, the kind of voice that had survived hurt but still chose softness. "Yes," Adrian managed, surprised by how human his own voice sounded beside her presence, "and you must be." "Lena," she replied, sitting down carefully, as if she expected to be judged the moment she touched the chair. Lena. The name fit her, quiet, unpolished beauty wrapped in modesty, like a flower still learning the sun could choose her. Adrian was used to women who talked too fast, smiled too wide, and loved too loud for attention. But Lena, she didn't try to impress him. She didn't even lift her eyes after sitting down. She just held her hands together, as though steadying herself against an invisible storm. He watched her for a moment. She didn't know him, not the headlines, not the scandals, not the billionaire rumors that made the world talk. She didn't search his face like she knew him. She treated him like a stranger. And somehow, that made his heart exhale. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. Lena gave a small nod. "I almost didn't," she whispered. He leaned slightly forward. "Why not?" Her lips pressed together. She hesitated. Then a faint, shaky breath slipped out. "Because people don't meet someone like me, by choice." There were no diamonds on her fingers, no brand-name clothes, no hint of a life padded by comfort. Instead, her wrists carried the faintest red mark, like someone had grabbed her too tightly not long ago. Her dress sleeves were carefully pulled down, as if hiding more than fabric. Something inside Adrian tensed with concern, not curiosity. He could feel it, this girl carried pain the way others carried handbags. The waiter arrived, placing 2 glasses of water on the table. Lena immediately lowered her gaze, hiding behind her hair. Adrian noticed the tiny flinch in her shoulders, like she was bracing for judgment, maybe even humiliation. He waited until the waiter left before speaking again. "Lena," he said gently, I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. We can talk about anything, or nothing. Just breathe. You're safe here. She looked up, slowly, startled by the kindness. No one had used that word for her in a very long time. Safe. Her throat tightened, and she blinked fast, not enough to cry, but enough for him to see the storm she was holding back. I'm not very good at dates, she confessed softly. That makes two of us, Adrian replied, a faint smile warming his usually guarded face. For the first time. The soft murmur of the restaurant faded behind the strange silence between them. Adrian had been on hundreds of business dinners where words were weapons and smiles were masks, but this silence, it was different. It wasn't awkward. It was honest. He found himself studying Lena, not with judgment, but with something he didn't even recognize anymore, genuine curiosity. After a few long seconds, she whispered, "You keep looking at me like you're trying to read something." Adrian blinked, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stare." Her lips curved slightly. "It's okay. I'm just not used to being looked at like that." "Like what?" he asked quietly. "Like I'm real," she replied. Those words hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to ask her what she meant, what kind of world had she lived in where people look through her, not at her. But something in her expression told him she wasn't ready to tell yet. So instead, he shifted the conversation gently. "What do you do, Lena?" She hesitated, eyes dropping to her lap. "I used to be a teacher, at a small public school," she said slowly, "but I had to leave last year." He noticed how her voice dimmed at the word leave. "Why did you have to?" Adrian asked, his tone careful. She bit her lip, and her hands tightened on her purse strap. "My mother got sick," she said after a moment. "There were hospital bills, too many. And the school couldn't give me leave for more than a month. So I quit." The simplicity of her words masked the struggle behind them. He could see it, the exhaustion in her posture, the quiet ache of someone who had carried too much alone. "I'm sorry," Adrian said softly. "That must have been hard." She smiled faintly, though her eyes glimmered with sadness. "Hard? It's been a storm. But you don't stop walking just because it rains, right?" That line, humble, raw, and brave, cut through his guarded chest like light through fog. He nodded. "You're stronger than you think." Lena looked up, surprised. "Why do you say that?" "Because you're here," he said. "Because you showed up even when everything in your eyes says life hasn't made that easy." Her breath hitched, as though no one had ever noticed her pain without asking for details. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Only the faint hum of music filled the air, a song about second chances. Then she asked softly, "And what about you, Adrian? What made you say yes to a blind date?" He laughed under his breath, shaking his head. "Honestly? My friend Ray forced me. He said it was my final chance before I die alone." His tone was playful, but the loneliness behind it was real. Lena chuckled faintly. "So this was supposed to be a joke?" He nodded. "That was the plan." "And now?" she asked. He met her eyes, really met them, and the answer came out without thought. "Now. I'm not sure it is." For the first time, she smiled fully, not because she wanted to, but because she felt it. The waiter returned to take their order, and for a moment, the conversation paused, but the weight of unspoken things sat between them like a fragile glass wall. After the waiter left, Adrian leaned back slightly. He could feel a question forming in his chest, gentle, but bold. "Lena," he said softly, "earlier, when you said people don't meet someone like you by choice, why did you say that?" She froze. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in her breathing, in the way her fingers tightened around the edge of the tablecloth, as though bracing herself against old wounds clawing up through memory. She lowered her eyes. "It's complicated." "I'm not in a hurry," he replied. Those 5 words, "I'm not in a hurry," were sharper than any confession. Because she was used to people who didn't stay long enough to listen. She swallowed, voice trembling. "I wasn't always like this. I used to smile easily. I used to trust people. I used to believe that kindness meant safety. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the ache of holding them back. But life teaches you strange lessons when you have nothing, she continued. To some people, poverty is a circumstance, but to others, it makes you disposable. Adrian's heart clenched. He could see her now, not a soft girl, not a frail one, but someone who had survived invisibility. She took a shaky breath. My father died when I was 17. Everything fell apart after that, home, money, relatives, all gone. My mother and I worked whatever jobs we could find. I studied at night, worked in the mornings, slept in between heartbreaks. I kept telling myself, one day it will get better. And did it, he whispered. She gave a small, sad smile. For a little while. I became a teacher. I thought I finally had stability, a place where I mattered. The children loved me. I felt seen again. Then her voice cracked, just once. But when my mother got sick, the world reminded me of my place again. I couldn't afford her treatment. I tried borrowing. Tried selling everything. And one night, I realized I was begging not for her life, but for time. She looked away, blinking back a wave of pain. Adrian didn't interrupt. He let his silence become shelter. I lost the house, she whispered. Now we live in a single rented room above a rundown grocery shop. I work afternoon shifts at a tailoring shop for cash. I barely earn enough for her medicine. She breathed out slowly. So no, people don't usually choose someone like me. They want pretty, polished, comfortable, not a life with scars and hospital bills. A long pause rested between them. Then Adrian said quietly, I didn't choose a polished girl tonight. I chose the one who walked through storms and still showed up. Her eyes lifted, startled, overwhelmed. Something in that moment broke the distance, not romance, not attachment, just the raw recognition of two wounded souls who had never been given room to be fragile. The candles on the table flickered gently, and a quiet warmth settled between them, the first kind of peace either of them had felt in a very long time. For minutes, neither spoke. They didn't need to. It was the kind of silence that heals. But Adrian knew there was a storm hiding behind this calm, a truth he couldn't delay forever. She didn't know who he was. Not his world. Not his wealth. Not the power his name carried. He had never hidden his identity before, he simply never cared who discovered it. But with Lena, the thought of her finding out too soon felt terrifying. Not because she would be impressed, but because she might walk away. He wanted her to see him, not his empire. So he said nothing, just yet. Instead, he asked softly, what do you want from life, Lena? Not survival, not duty, but something for yourself. If all the pain disappeared tomorrow, what would you choose? No one had ever asked her that. She stared at him, stunned. I don't know, she whispered. You've never been allowed to dream, he asked gently. She gave the most heartbreaking nod, small, ashamed, almost apologetic for wanting anything at all. I used to dream of opening a small community school, she said quietly. For children who can't afford real education. A place where they feel safe and loved, not dismissed like statistics. But dreams like that don't belong to people like me anymore. I can't even afford tomorrow's medicine. Her voice broke, not into tears, but into exhaustion. Adrian's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her he could fix everything in one signature, one decision. But that would turn her into a charity case, not the dignified human she was struggling to remain. So instead he said, with a softness she wasn't used to hearing. Maybe life hasn't stolen your dream, maybe it's just waiting for you to get strong enough to build it. She stared at him, stunned again, as if no one had ever spoken belief into her before. Moments later, the restaurant lights dimmed slightly, a sign that evening service was transitioning. Lena looked around nervously, her fingers curling together. Are you okay? He asked. She hesitated, then whispered something that broke him a little. I'm not used to expensive places. The last time I entered a restaurant like this, a waiter told me I looked too poor to belong here. I never forgot the feeling. Adrian inhaled sharply, not in pity, but in anger at a world that bruised gentle souls. "You belong wherever dignity is," he said firmly. "And dignity is sitting right here at this table." Her lips trembled, not crying, not breaking, just finally feeling seen. But not every wound bleeds outward. Because while she was beginning to trust him, he was beginning to fear himself. What would happen when she found out he owned half the skyline she walked under every day? That the building she had just entered belonged to him too? He wanted to earn her heart slowly, moment by moment. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to leave a comment, share what moved you the most, and let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Quest so more hearts can be reached through stories of hope, healing, and humanity. Your support means everything. Heartsuit.